The stars above Proxima Centauri B gleamed like cold diamonds, their light filtering through the swirling amber clouds that painted the sky. The alien world, untouched by human feet, was a beauty to behold, a silent, untouched realm of iridescent, crystal formations and vast, barren deserts. The Vocari, the species native to this planet, had long been the keepers of knowledge. Their culture and technology advanced far beyond anything humanity could imagine. To them, the universe was a puzzle, and they believed themselves the masters of its secrets. For centuries, the Vocari had watched humanity rise from the ashes of their primitive past, marveling at the quickness with which Earthlings adapted and conquered. But to the Vocari, humans were still nothing more than an experiment, a species that had survived by chance. Their belief was simple. The galaxy was theirs, and humanity had no place in it. That was before the message arrived. The transmission came through the quiet channels of deep space, something the Vocari had never expected from Earth. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't a threat. It was a simple statement. "We are coming." The Vocari scoffed at first. Humans, coming to challenge us? The very idea seemed absurd, but soon the frequency of the message became undeniable. It wasn't just a random signal. It was deliberate, persistent, and far stronger than anything the Vocari had ever received from Earth. "We are coming," the message repeated, over and over again, until it reached the highest halls of the Vocari leadership. Only then did they realize humanity was not as weak as they had thought. Ian Stone, leader of the Earth force sent to Proxima Centauri B, didn't know he was part of something bigger than a simple military mission. He had been chosen for his exceptional skills, his reputation as a soldier who always got the job done. His team had been briefed, but the mission was clear. Retrieve the artifact from this mysterious planet and bring it back to Earth. The Vocari had made a huge mistake, underestimating humanity, but Ian didn't care about that yet. What mattered was finding the artifact. What Ian didn't know was that the artifact wasn't just any object. It was a weapon. Not one forged by any hands, but something ancient, older than the stars themselves. A weapon built with the power to change the course of the universe. It wasn't until Ian stood on the rocky edge of Proxima Centauri B's highest cliff that he began to feel the weight of what he had been sent to do. The vast valley of iridescent crystals stretched before him, their sharp angles casting strange, angular shadows across the alien landscape. The setting sun gave the world an amber hue, creating an almost unreal painting of light and color. Beside him, his guide, WEA, was scanning the terrain with an expert eye. She was a Vocari, a striking blue-skinned humanoid whose presence was almost otherworldly. Her long, midnight blue hair shimmered in the fading light, and her dark outfit hugged her lithe form. Her beauty was undeniable, but it was her sharp mind and deadly efficiency that had earned Ian's respect over the past few months. "We're not going to find it by standing here," she said, her voice teasing yet filled with purpose. "You humans have the worst sense of direction." Ian turned to look at her, a smirk crossing his face. "Maybe I just wanted to admire the view. It's not every day I get to see a world this alien." Wei rolled her eyes, but there was a glint of amusement in them. "We're not here for sightseeing, Ian. The artifact signature is coming from the eastern ridge. We're heading west," and raised an eyebrow. "You just enjoy showing off your superior knowledge, don't you?" "Not showing off," WEA replied, her eyes scanning the horizon. "Just stating facts. The artifact is in the east. So let's go." With that, they began to move, Ian following closely behind. They had been working together for months now, tracking down artifacts from long-forgotten civilizations for the Galactic Heritage Foundation. What started as a professional partnership had grown into something deeper, though neither of them spoke of it. It was enough for them both to simply acknowledge it in the way their eyes lingered just a bit too long, or the way their conversations had become more personal over time. Their journey through the alien terrain was more treacherous than they anticipated. The towering crystals seemed to pulse with energy, their surfaces reflecting the strange colors of the sky. The ground beneath their boots was slick and uneven, making each step a calculated risk. But Ian, a soldier to the core, moved with purpose, his instincts telling him they were getting close. As they rounded a massive formation of crystal, they stopped. There, standing like a sentinel in the heart of the valley, was the artifact. Sword. But it wasn't just any sword. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. The blade gleamed with an inner light that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Ancient symbols, etched deep into the metal, ran along its length, their meaning. Lost to time. The sword seemed to call to Ian in a way he couldn't explain. He felt an undeniable pull, a sense of purpose that went beyond his training as a soldier. "This is it," Ian whispered, his voice thick with awe. "This is what we've been looking for." Wei stood beside him, her expression unreadable. She activated her scanner, the soft hum of the device breaking the silence. "This sword has been here long before your people even knew how to build a ship," she said quietly. "Every species that has found it has tried to remove it. None have succeeded, not even with advanced quantum technology." Ian's fingers hovered over the hilt, and without thinking, he stepped forward. "What if we try it the old-fashioned way?" "Don't be ridiculous," Wei laughed. "It's not going to—" But before she could finish, Ian's hand closed around the sword's hilt. In that instant, the air around them crackled with energy. The sword exploded into a brilliant blue light, arcs of electricity dancing along its length like miniature lightning bolts. The ground trembled beneath their feet. Ian stood, stunned, as the sword began to hum in his hand. It wasn't just a weapon, it was alive in a way he couldn't comprehend. The symbols on the blade pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, and for a moment he felt a connection to something ancient and powerful. We need to get out of here." Wei's voice broke through the chaos. Her usual calm demeanor was gone, replaced by something much more urgent. "The Vocari will sense the surge in energy. We're not alone here." Ian didn't respond. His eyes were locked on the sword, the weight of its power sinking in. This wasn't just the beginning of a mission, it was the beginning of a war, and humanity had just made its first move. The moment Ian Stone gripped the hilt of the ancient sword, the world seemed to shift around him. The sky above Proxima Centauri B darkened as if the very atmosphere was reacting to the sword's awakening. The once calm air grew charged with energy, crackling and humming, as if the planet itself had begun to tremble. Ian could feel the pulse of the blade, rhythmic and steady, reverberating through his body like an electric current. It was as though the sword had recognized him, chosen him, and now he was connected to something far beyond his understanding. Behind him, Wei watched in stunned silence, her usual composure slipping. "This is impossible," she murmured, her voice barely audible over the growing hum of the blade. "No one should be able to do this." The sword's glow intensified, its blue light casting eerie shadows across the alien landscape. It was as if the blade was absorbing the light around it, drawing power from the very planet they stood on. Ian's fingers tightened around the hilt, instinctively. He didn't know why, but it felt right. "We need to move," Wei said, her voice rising. In urgency, she scanned the horizon, her sharp eyes narrowing as the sound of approaching ships reached their ears. "The energy signature, it's already been detected. We're not alone." Ian didn't need any further prompting. He could hear the distant hum of engines now, growing louder by the second. The Vocari, his mission's supposed allies, were coming. They would have detected the energy surge from the sword's activation, and they wouldn't be happy. We have to get to the ship. Now, Ian said, his voice steady despite the chaos that was unfolding around them. But as he tried to move, the sword in his hand pulsed again, more forcefully this time. His heart seemed to beat in sync with the weapon, the connection deepening. For a split second, a vision flashed through his mind, a memory not his own, yet unmistakably clear. He saw a fleet of enormous human warships, ancient and powerful, floating through the void of space. Their massive forms moved with precision and authority. The image shifted, and he saw a battle, an epic clash between human and alien forces. But the humans weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for something greater. The vision faded as quickly as it had come, but the weight of it lingered. Ian's chest tightened, as if the weight of the knowledge had settled deep within him. This wasn't just about the sword. It was about the history of humanity. Long forgotten, now starting to awaken. "We!" Ian called, shaking off the remnants of the vision. "We need to move, now!" With a quick nod, she led the way. Through the crystalline landscape, her movements swift and calculated. Ian followed closely, the sword still glowing brightly in his hand, its light dimming only slightly as they moved through the alien terrain. The crystal formations around them seemed to hum with life, vibrating in response to the sword's power. It was almost as if the entire valley was alive, watching, waiting. Ian couldn't shake the feeling that the sword wasn't just a weapon. It was a key to something far bigger than this planet, something that could change the fate of the galaxy. As they moved through the valley, Ian's mind raced. The Vokari had made a grave mistake underestimating humanity. But what if the sword wasn't just the key to defeating the Vokari? What if it held the power to unlock something else, something far more dangerous? "We're almost there," WEA said, breaking his train of thought. Just up ahead. They reached a small outcrop of rock overlooking a ravine, where Ian's ship was hidden. It was a small, stealthy vessel, perfect for getting off-world unnoticed. But as Ian turned to make his way toward it, the sound of approaching ships grew louder, closer. "We don't have much time," Ian said, looking over at WEA. The urgency in his voice was unmistakable, but before they could take another step, a flash of light streaked across the sky, followed by the unmistakable sound of ships dropping from the atmosphere. The Vokari had arrived. "Stay low," WEA hissed, pulling Ian behind a large crystal formation. They crouched low, pressing their backs against the jagged surface as the Vokari ships roared overhead. The metallic gleam of their crafts reflected in the setting sun as they passed by, unaware of the two humans hidden just below them. Ian's heart raced as he gripped the sword tighter, his mind still reeling from the visions it had shown him. The power was undeniable, but it was also dangerous. What if the Vokari knew more about this weapon than they had let on? What if this wasn't just a tool? It was a weapon that could change the course of history, for better or worse. "Think they saw us?" Ian whispered, his voice low. "No," WEA replied, her tone sharp. "But we need to keep moving. Now." They waited in silence, watching as the Vokari ships passed overhead, their engines roaring like thunder in the sky. Once the last ship was out of sight, WEA motioned for Ian to follow her, and they made their way to the hidden ravine where the ship was waiting. But as they approached, Ian couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The sword pulsed again, its blue glow brightening as they neared the ship. It was as if the weapon was reacting to something, calling out to something in the distance. Ian couldn't help but wonder if the sword knew something he didn't, if it had a purpose that had yet to be revealed. "We need to get off this planet," Ian said, his voice low but determined, "before things get worse." As WEA climbed into the cockpit of the ship, Ian stood for a moment longer, staring at the landscape that had once seemed so peaceful. Now, it felt like a battlefield. The sword in his hand was no longer just a relic. It was a symbol of the storm that was about to engulf the galaxy. And Ian Stone, whether he was ready or not, was at the center of it. With a final glance at the horizon, Ian boarded the ship, the hatch closing behind him. As the engines roared to life, he felt the weight of what lay ahead settle on his shoulders. The sword was more than just a weapon. It was the key to something much larger. And Ian Stone was about to find out exactly what that was. The hum of the ship's engines was the only sound as Ian Stone sat in the cockpit, his fingers tracing the edge of the glowing sword that lay across his lap. The blue light pulsed rhythmically, almost as if it were alive, matching the beat of his heart. Each pulse sent a shiver down his spine, a reminder of the strange connection between him and the weapon. Something in him knew that the sword wasn't just a tool, it was a key. But to what? He wasn't sure yet. As WEA guided the ship through the alien atmosphere of Proxima Centauri B, the vast landscape of crystal formations and jagged rock passed below them. The tension in the air was thick, the weight of their mission pressing down on them. The Vocari ships were still in pursuit, their detection systems likely alerting them to the energy surge from the sword. It wouldn't be long before they came, after them, and Ian knew that the time to hide was running out. "How much farther?" Ian asked, his voice breaking the silence that had hung between them since their narrow escape. "We're almost clear of the atmosphere," WEA replied, her fingers dancing over the control panel with practiced ease. "Once we're in orbit, we can jump to the next sector. We'll be safe there. But we need to figure out what's going on." "With that sword," Ian nodded, his eyes fixed on the blade in his hands. "I know. There's more to this than just a weapon. I can feel it. Something's calling to me." Wei glanced at him, her expression unreadable, but her eyes, those deep, ancient eyes, held a glimmer of understanding. She had known from the start that there was more to the sword than met the eye. But like Ian, she had no answers, only questions. As the ship broke free from the planet's atmosphere and entered the cold expanse of space, Ian's mind drifted back to the strange vision he had seen earlier, the flash of human warships, the clashes of distant battles. The imagery was vivid, powerful, and he couldn't shake the feeling that it was a memory, not from his own life, but from something deeper, something ancient. "We need to understand this," WEA said, her voice quiet but urgent. "The sword is tied to something bigger, Ian. Something the Vocari don't even understand. Something humanity doesn't understand either," Ian muttered, gripping the sword tighter. "I saw ships, huge, ancient ships, and human soldiers, wielding weapons that could tear reality apart. We've been searching for answers for centuries," WEA said, her tone shifting, as if she were speaking to herself more than to Ian. "The Vocari believe we have the answers, but in truth, we've only scratched the surface. The sword, it's not just a weapon. It's a key to the past, a part of something much older than any of us." "How old?" Ian asked, his voice laced with disbelief. "Older than the stars themselves," WEA replied, her voice almost a whisper. "It's tied to the First Empire, an ancient human civilization that spanned galaxies. The Vocari have records of it, but they don't know the full story. They've been searching for answers too, but they've never found the truth." Ian's grip on the sword tightened. "So this sword, it's not just a weapon from humanity's past, it's part of a legacy. A legacy we're only now starting to understand." "Exactly," WEA said, her eyes meeting his. "And I believe you're the one meant to unlock it." Before Ian could respond, a blaring alarm cut through the air, breaking their conversation. His heart leapt in his chest as the ship's navigation console flashed a warning. "We've been detected," WEA said, her voice calm but urgent. "The Vocari ships are locking onto our signature. We're not alone anymore." Ian stood up, his eyes scanning the screen in front of him. The Vocari ships were closing in fast, their engines glowing bright as they sped through the black void of space. The pursuit was inevitable, but what did it mean for them? What did the Vocari want with the sword? And more importantly, what did humanity have to do with all of this? We can't outrun them, Ian said, his mind racing. We need to figure out how to fight back. I've got an idea, WEA said, her fingers flying across the controls. But it's risky. We'll need to trust the sword. Ian didn't hesitate. I'm ready. The ship rocked suddenly as WEA initiated a sequence Ian didn't fully understand. She maneuvered the ship through a series of high-speed evasions, weaving between asteroids and debris in an attempt to shake the Vocari ships. But as the pursuers gained on them, something unexpected happened. The sword in Ian's lap began to hum louder, its glow growing brighter. We're too exposed, WEA said, her voice tight with concern. But we have one option left. Without another word, she activated a secondary system in the ship, a kind of last resort shield that could temporarily disrupt their energy signature. As soon as she did, a powerful shockwave pulsed outward, sending ripples through the fabric of space itself. For a moment, everything went silent. The Vocari ships were thrown off course, their sensors scrambled by the unexpected wave. But the sword, as if in response, flared with energy, emitting a powerful pulse that sliced through the disruption like a hot knife through butter. The shockwave subsided, and the Vocari ships began to regain their bearings. I thought that might work, WEA said, her eyes wide in disbelief. The sword just connected with the ship's energy systems. It's like it's attuned to us. Ian, still gripping the sword, felt the same strange connection that had begun the moment he touched it, but now the sword was guiding him. It was showing him something. A new vision crashed into his mind, a dark, cosmic expanse where swirling, shadowy figures moved through the void. A war had raged here long ago. Humans, his ancestors, had fought these entities, protecting the sea. Galaxy with weapons like the one in his hand. And the war wasn't over. We're not just fighting the Vocari, Ian muttered under his breath. We're fighting something far worse. Wei turned to him, concern written across her face. What did you see? Something ancient, Ian said, his voice steady despite the weight of the vision. The Vocari are just the beginning. The real enemy is still out there, waiting. The ship shuddered as another Vocari vessel came into range. This time they weren't going to escape so easily, but Ian wasn't afraid anymore. The sword had chosen him for a reason, and now it was time for him to prove that humanity was ready for the fight. We need to get to the heart of this, Ian said, standing tall. The Vocari, the sword, the war, it's all connected, and we're the key, with WEA by his side and the sword at the ready. Ian braced himself for what was to come. They had uncovered a hidden truth, and now it was time to face it head-on. The galaxy was about to change, and humanity would be at the center of it. The cold expanse of space stretched endlessly before them as Ian Stone stared out of the cockpit window, the Vocari ships growing smaller in the distance. Wei sat at the controls, her dark blue skin glowing faintly in the low light of the ship. The sword lay across Ian's lap, its pulse steady, its power undeniable. But something had changed. The air felt heavier now, charged with the weight of secrets they weren't meant to uncover. As they moved further from Proxima Centauri B, the reality of their situation settled in. The Vocari weren't just a threat. They were only the first wave of something much larger, something ancient and terrifying. And the sword. It wasn't just an artifact. It was a key, a weapon, and a symbol of humanity's forgotten past. It had chosen Ian for a reason, but that reason was still unclear. But there was something else, something Ian couldn't shake, a feeling deep in his gut that gnawed at him, making him question everything. They had been working together for months, gathering artifacts for the Galactic Heritage Foundation, but now it felt different. Wei was different. We need to talk, Ian said, his voice breaking the silence. His tone wasn't one of command or urgency, but something more introspective, more personal. Wei didn't look up from the controls. About what? About the sword, Ian replied, his eyes still fixed on the pulsating blade. And about us. For a long moment, Wei said nothing. The hum of the ship filled the air, but there was a palpable tension between them. It was as if the distance between them had grown, though they sat only a few feet apart. We're not just dealing with an ancient weapon, Ian, Wei said, her voice low but filled with an unfamiliar edge. We're dealing with history. The Vocari don't understand it, and neither do we. But it's pulling us both in, and you have no idea what you've just unlocked. Ian frowned, his hand tightening around the sword's hilt. What do you mean? We both know the Vocari have been hiding something, she continued, her voice colder now. But it's not just the sword they've been keeping from us. It's the truth about what's really going on here. Humanity doesn't even know half of it. Ian's mind raced. He had trusted Wei, trusted her expertise, her knowledge, even her companionship. But something in her words sent a chill down his spine. You're saying the Vocari aren't the real threat, Ian said, his voice growing darker. Wei's eyes flickered for a moment, a flash of something unreadable crossing her features. She leaned back in her seat, her fingers still lightly tapping the OE. Controls. I'm saying you've been played, Ian, we all have. The Vocari might have started this, but the real danger isn't them. Ian's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? If it's not them, then who? Before he could finish, the ship jolted violently, throwing both of them against their seats. The emergency alarms blared, the red lights flashing as the ship rocked back and forth. What the hell was that? Ian shouted, grabbing hold of the console. We're under attack! Wei's voice was sharp, her calm demeanor gone. She quickly activated the ship's shields, but the damage was already done. Another blast rocked the ship, this time sending the hull into a violent spin. Ian's heart raced as he realized what had happened. We're being targeted by the Vocari ships, but they were far behind us. Not the Vocari, Wei muttered. It's worse than that. A massive shadow appeared on their sensors, closing in quickly. It wasn't one of the Vocari ships. It was something larger, something far more menacing. Ian's stomach dropped as the shape of the ship became clear. Pirates, Wei whispered. And not just any pirates. These are the Ravagers. Ian's blood ran cold. The Ravagers were a deadly group of marauders known across the galaxy for their ruthless tactics and brutal ways. They didn't care about wealth or resources. They were simply after one thing: trophies. And it was clear that Ian and Wei were their next targets. Before Ian could react, Wei turned to him, her face now set in a mask of resolve. You need to trust me, Ian. We're not just fighting the Vocari or the Ravagers. There's a much bigger game at play, and you've just stepped into it. I've trusted you this far, Ian said, his voice filled with urgency. But what the hell is going on? Why are they after us now? What is the real reason they want the sword? For the first time, Wei hesitated, her eyes flickering with doubt before she met his gaze. The sword. It's not just a weapon. It's a map. Ian blinked in confusion. A map to what? A map to the heart of light, Wei replied, her voice barely a whisper. The Ravagers know about it. The Vocari know about it. And now, you know about it. Ian's mind reeled. The heart of light? What is that? Wei stood up, her movements precise and deliberate, as though she had been preparing for this moment for a long time. It's not just some ancient relic, Ian. It's a power that could reshape the galaxy. It's what the Vocari have been searching for, what the Ravagers want, and what humanity is now tied to. The sword is the key to it. A chilling realization hit Ian like a punch to the gut. And we're the ones holding it. We're the ones holding the key, Wei said softly. But it's not just up to us. This isn't something you can fight your way through. The Ravagers will stop at nothing to get it. And the Vocari, they'll do whatever it takes to ensure humanity doesn't unlock what's buried out there. Ian's thoughts were spinning. So the Vocari aren't just trying to stop us from taking the sword. They're trying to stop us from finding the Heart of Light. We've already started a war, Ian, WEA said, turning to face him. But the real war is just beginning. Before Ian could process her words, the ship jolted again, and the dark silhouette of the Ravager ship loomed large on their screens. It was closing in fast, its weapons primed and ready. "We're out of time," WEA said, her voice colder now. "The Vocari might have betrayed us, but the Ravagers, they're coming for everything we've uncovered. And if we don't act fast, we'll lose the only chance we have to understand what's at stake." Ian gripped the sword tighter, feeling the surge of power coursing through it once again. They were no longer just running from a single enemy. They were running from the future itself, a future shaped by the past and the dark forces that had always been waiting in the shadows. "Let's make sure they don't win," Ian said, his voice filled with determination. "We've got one shot at this, and I'm not going to let anyone take it from us." With that, they prepared for what was to come. The stakes had changed, and the battle was no longer just about the sword. It was about the survival of everything humanity had fought for, and the truth of their place in the galaxy. And it was only just beginning. The stars outside the ship's viewport glittered coldly, like distant eyes watching them. Ian Stone stood near the cockpit, gripping the ancient sword, his knuckles white with tension. His mind was clouded with the chaos of the last few hours. The Vocari ships in pursuit, the Ravagers closing in, and the cryptic revelations WEA had dropped on him. The Heart of Light. The map hidden within the sword. The power that both the Vocari and the Ravagers were willing to destroy everything for. But none of it made sense. Not yet. And with every new twist in their journey, Ian found himself unraveling, deeper into a mystery that had been buried for centuries. It was no longer just about survival. It was about something much larger than any of them could have imagined. "We're not out of this yet," WEA said, her voice tense as she worked the controls. Her blue skin shimmered under the dim cockpit. Lights. And Ian noticed the familiar edge in her voice, the one that hinted she knew more than she was letting on. "Tell me again what the Heart of Light is," Ian asked, his gaze never leaving the sword. It seemed to pulse with energy in his hands, as if it were alive and aware of the perilous situation they found themselves in. "The Heart of Light is humanity's legacy, Ian," WEA said, her tone soft but firm. "It's not just an ancient weapon or a key to some forgotten treasure. It's the heart of an ancient technology, one that was used by humanity's first empire. The ones who built the sword, the ones who left this map behind. They were the true guardians of the galaxy, and the Heart of Light is their greatest secret." Ian's brow furrowed. "Guardians? The same humans who built the ships I saw in the vision? The ones who fought those things?" "Exactly." WEA's voice softened, almost as if she were speaking to herself. "The void entities, the ones we thought were myths, they were real. And they still are. The first empire, the humans, who wielded that power, fought them back. But when the war ended, they disappeared, left everything behind. The Vocari found traces of it, but they never understood what they were dealing with, and now so much has been forgotten." The ship lurched forward as WEA punched in a series of commands, narrowly avoiding the incoming Ravager ships closing in on their position. Ian's heart pounded in his chest as the ship rocked violently under the impact of a near miss. "They want the Heart of Light," Ian muttered. "But why? What's so important about it?" "That's the part they don't tell you," Ware replied, her gaze fixed on the ship's readout. "The Heart of Light isn't just a power source. It's a living energy. It feeds off connection, love, unity. The First Empire understood this. It's what made them so powerful." Ian turned to her, his confusion growing. Love? That doesn't make any sense. We're talking about ancient warships, battles, survival. How does love fit into all of that? Love is power, Ian, WEA said, her voice calm, but filled with a deep, unshakable conviction. The heart of light wasn't just about victory. It was about protecting everything. It was the bond between humans and all other species they protected. That bond fueled the power, the sword. It's a reminder of that bond. Ian stared at her, the weight of her words sinking in. He had always thought of war as something driven by anger, fear, or necessity. But now, it was clear. The ancient. Humans had fought not out of rage or hunger for power, but to protect the galaxy from forces far beyond their understanding. And the heart of light had been their most powerful weapon, a weapon of unity. We have to find it, Ian said, his voice resolute. We need to understand what it really is and how it works. But how do we get to it before the Ravagers or the Vocari? Time is running out, WEA said, her eyes scanning the ship's scanners. But we're close. There's a place, a hidden facility from the First Empire. It's in the Crimson sector. But getting there won't be easy. The Ravagers control that space, and they'll do anything to stop us from reaching it. Ian's thoughts whirled. The Crimson sector was known for its violent storms, vast gas clouds that tore apart anything that entered its atmosphere. Only the bravest, or the most reckless, dared to venture there. And the Ravagers controlled the space around it, making it nearly impossible for anyone to pass. We don't have much of a choice, Ian said, his grip on the sword tightening. If we're going to survive this, we need to get to that facility. We need to understand what the heart of light really is before the Ravagers do. Agreed, WEA said, turning the ship toward the coordinates she had input. The screen ahead flashed with a map showing the treacherous path leading through the Crimson sector, where the final piece of this puzzle was hidden. But we won't be going alone. The Ravagers will know exactly where we're headed the moment we enter that sector. And they'll be waiting for us, Ian nodded. Then we'll make sure they regret it. As the ship hurtled toward the Crimson sector, the tension inside the cockpit thickened. The vast gas clouds loomed ahead, swirling like blood in space, the red hue casting an ominous glow. Ian felt the sword pulse in his hand, as though it was guiding them, urging them forward. There was no turning back now. The sword was more than just a weapon. It was a beacon. You ready for this? WEA asked, her voice low, her hands steady on the controls. Always, Ian replied, his eyes fixed on the swirling chaos ahead. Let's see what the heart of light really can do. With a final glance at the course ahead, WEA activated the ship's hyperdrive, and they plunged into the heart of the storm. The ship shook violently as they entered the Crimson sector, the energy from the storm surrounding them like a living force. But Ian held the sword tightly. In that moment, he knew he wasn't just holding a weapon. He was holding the key to humanity's future, and he wasn't about to let anyone take that away from him. The ship plunged deeper into the Crimson sector, its hull groaning under the strain of navigating the violent storm clouds. Outside, the red gas clouds swirled like blood in water, creating a hellish atmosphere that would have sent most ships scattering in fear. But not this one. This ship was no ordinary vessel, and Ian Stone was no ordinary man. The sword, glowing bright and steady, seemed to pulse with an energy that resonated with the storm, guiding them through the chaos. We're almost there, WEA said, her voice steady despite the tremors that rocked the ship. The facility is just ahead. It's hidden beneath the surface of a dead moon in the heart of the storm. We need to get there before the Ravagers catch up. Ian nodded, gripping the hilt of the sword. He could feel its power, thrumming like a heartbeat in his hand. Every fiber of his being was connected to it now. It wasn't just a weapon. It was his connection to something much larger, something far more ancient than he could comprehend. The facility they were headed toward wasn't just a hidden outpost. It was the last bastion of humanity's ancient empire, the final remnants of a time when humans were the undisputed guardians of the galaxy. And Ian now realized that it wasn't just the sword that had brought him here. It was his bloodline. The sword recognized him, just as it had recognized his ancestors long ago. He was the key to unlocking the power of the heart of light. The storm raged outside the ship, but Ian felt an unsettling calm wash over him. Every passing second seemed to stretch longer than the last. His eyes were fixed on the swirling crimson clouds, but his thoughts were elsewhere. What would they find at the facility? What had humanity left behind in the wake of their war with the void entities? And why had the Ravagers and the Vocari been so desperate to stop them from reaching it? The ship shook violently as a bolt of energy lanced through the storm, narrowly missing them. The ship's shields flickered, and the warning lights flashed. As the Ravagers' ships closed in, their forms dark and foreboding against the chaos of the gas clouds. "Looks like we've got company," WEA said, her eyes scanning the radar. "We're not going to make it to the facility without a fight." Ian's grip on the sword tightened. "We don't need to make it there without a fight. We just need to survive long enough to get inside. Let them come." The Ravager ships, monstrous and jagged, emerged from the storm, their hulls covered in spikes and trophies from past victories. Their engines roared like a pack of wild beasts, and their weapons flared with deadly energy. Ian could feel the sword hum in his hands, as though it was responding to the threat. He knew they were outnumbered, but he also knew something the Ravagers didn't. The sword was the key, and it was about to unlock more than just the facility. It was about to reveal a power that would change everything. "Hold on," WEA warned, her voice rising in intensity as she maneuvered the ship through the violent storm. "This is going to get rough." The ship banked hard, narrowly avoiding another blast from the Ravagers. Ian's heart raced as the energy from the sword surged through his veins. He could feel its connection to the storm, its pulse in tune with the chaos around them. The facility was close now, just a few more kilometers through the swirling storm. "We're not getting through this without a fight," Ian said, his voice low but steady. He turned to WEA. "Take us into the heart of the storm. We'll use the storm's energy to our advantage." She looked at him, a flash of understanding crossing her face. She knew exactly what he was suggesting. "You're not serious," she said, but there was a hint of amusement in her voice. "I am," Ian replied, his eyes locked on the approaching Ravager ships. "We'll create a path through the storm. If we can channel the energy from the sword, we can use the storm to shield us and disrupt their targeting systems. The Ravagers won't know what hit them." With a determined nod, WEA engaged the ship's thrusters, sending them plummeting deeper into the storm. The ship's hull groaned as it tore through the violent winds and lightning strikes, but Ian could feel the sword's energy surge, responding to the storm's chaos. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sword's pulse guide him, letting it connect him to the storm's power. He felt it, the energy. It was like nothing he had ever experienced before. The storm's power, the sword's power, all converging within him. He wasn't just a man anymore. He was a conduit for something, ancient, something greater than himself. And he wasn't about to let the Ravagers or anyone else stand in his way. As the ship careened through the storm, Ian raised the sword high, channeling its energy. The blue light flared, expanding outward like a shockwave, carving a path through the storm. The Ravager ships faltered, their weapons firing wildly as the storm's energy disrupted their targeting systems. "We've got them," Ian said, his voice fierce and triumphant. "Push forward, WEA." With the Ravager's ships temporarily blinded by the storm, WEA punched the throttle, sending the ship hurtling toward the facility. Ian could see it now, a massive structure emerging from the clouds, its ancient design unlike anything they had seen before. It was a marvel of forgotten technology, its towering spires stretching high into the storm, protected by the very chaos that had concealed it for centuries. The Ravager ships were regrouping, But it was too late. Ian and WEA had reached the heart of the storm. The facility loomed ahead, a beacon of hope in the swirling madness. "We're here," WEA said, her voice filled with awe. Ian stood, the sword glowing brightly in his hands, its power still resonating through him. He felt it, the connection, the purpose. The heart of light was inside, and it was waiting for them. "We're not just here to survive," Ian said, his eyes locked on the entrance to the facility. "We're here to awaken something that was never meant to be forgotten." With a final, steadying breath, Ian led the way into the facility, the sword in his hand glowing brighter with each step. The future was no longer uncertain. The war had begun, and humanity's place at the center of it was about to be revealed. The heart of light was waiting. And so was the galaxy. The doors to the ancient facility slid open with a low hum, revealing a vast, dimly lit hall. The walls were smooth, dark, and covered with intricate symbols that pulsed faintly in the glow of the sword. The air inside felt heavy, almost alive, as if the very place was holding its breath, waiting for something, or someone. Ian Stone stepped forward, the sword in his hand guiding him like a beacon. Every step felt deliberate, as if the facility itself was reacting to his presence. He could feel it. The energy from the sword was growing stronger, more intense. It wasn't just the weapon's power. It was a presence, an ancient force that had slumbered for millennia, now awakening. "We're here," Wei said, her voice filled with awe as she followed Ian. Her eyes darted around the chamber, scanning the walls for any sign of danger. But there was no immediate threat. The facility was still. Silent. Too silent. "What do you think this place is?" Ian asked, his voice low, almost reverent. "It's a sanctuary," WEA said, her voice tinged with disbelief. "A place of immense power. This is where humanity's first empire built the heart of light. And now, it's waiting for you." Ian's heart skipped a beat. The heart of light. He had no idea what it truly was, what it could do, but he knew it was more than just a weapon. It was something that could change everything, something that could rewrite history. The sword in his hand pulsed again, its glow intensifying. The symbols on the walls seemed to shift, aligning with the blade's rhythm, as if the two were connected by some unseen force. Ian could feel the sword calling to something deep within the facility, something buried for far too long. "Over there," Wei said, pointing toward the far end of the hall. In the distance, a massive circular chamber loomed, its entrance flanked by towering pillars. The air around it shimmered with a strange energy, and Ian could feel the sword's power pulling him toward it. They moved toward the chamber, their footsteps echoing in the silence. As they crossed the threshold, the atmosphere shifted. The walls of the chamber seemed to glow, the symbols becoming more pronounced, more alive. The floor beneath their feet began to hum with energy, and the air crackled with anticipation. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, its surface gleaming with a soft golden light. On it rested a crystal, a perfectly shaped, radiant gem that seemed to pulse with an inner fire. It was the heart of light. Ian approached cautiously, the sword still glowing brightly in his hand. As he drew closer to the pedestal, the crystal began to hum, resonating with the sword's energy. The room seemed to pulse with life, and Ian could feel his heart race as the power of the sword and the heart of light intertwined. "This is it," Ian whispered, his voice filled with awe. "This is what we've been looking for." Wei stepped forward, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You found it, but I don't understand. The heart of light. It's not just a weapon. It's a force. It's meant to protect, to unite. But it needs a bond, Ian. It needs a connection." Ian looked at her, confusion in his eyes. "A bond?" "The First Empire," WEA explained, her voice steady despite the growing intensity in the room. They didn't use the heart of light to dominate. They used it to protect, to forge alliances. It's a tool for unity, not control. And it can only work if the bond between its wielder and others is strong enough. If it can feel that connection, that trust. The sword in Ian's hand pulsed again, more violently this time, as though it had understood WEA's words. It seemed to thrum with life, the energy from the heart of light merging with the blade's power, the two forces becoming one. "This is why it chose you," WEA said softly, stepping closer to Ian. "It chose you because of what you've proven. You've formed bonds. You've worked with others, fought with them, trusted them. This is what the heart of light was waiting for. It needs more than just strength. It needs unity." Ian stared at the heart of light, his fingers tightening. Around the sword's hilt, it was true. He had formed bonds, deep connections, with those around him, with WEA, with his team. Humanity had always been known for its ability to adapt, to survive. But this was different. This was the power of unity, of something greater than any one individual. With a deep breath, Ian stepped forward, placing the sword against the pedestal. The moment it touched the heart of light, the chamber erupted with light, brilliant, blinding, and pure. Ian felt the energy course through him, filling every fiber of his being, like a surge of electricity. He could see the images, flashes, of ancient battles, of humans fighting side by side with alien species, of galaxies united in peace. The heart of light was not just a weapon, it was a symbol, a promise of what could be if humanity and the other species of the galaxy stood together. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the light dimmed. The energy settled, and the room was still again. The sword, now resting against the pedestal, was no longer glowing with the same intensity, but it was clear that something had changed. The connection between Ian and the heart of light had been forged. Ian looked around the chamber, feeling the weight of what had just happened. The heart of light was no longer just an artifact. It was a force of nature, a power that could shape the future. And humanity, with all its flaws and imperfections, was now the guardian of that power. "We've done it," WEA said, her voice quiet but filled with awe. "The heart of light has been awakened." Ian nodded, still trying to process everything. The war, the sword, the facility, it was all connected. The Vocari, the Ravagers, the Void entities, they were all part of a much larger struggle. And now, humanity had a place in that struggle. A place as protectors, as guardians. But the real challenge was only just beginning. The heart of light was awakened, but there were others out there who would stop at nothing to take it from them. And now that humanity had the power, the responsibility was theirs. They would have to stand united, or the galaxy would fall. "We need to get this message out," Ian said, his voice steady. "Humanity is ready to protect this galaxy. We've found the heart of light, and now we have to make sure it's never forgotten again." As they turned to leave the chamber, the sword, still glowing faintly at Ian's side, he knew one thing for certain. Humanity's legacy was just beginning, and this time they would be ready.